All right, cool guys. So we're gonna review the live step-by-step process. I'm gonna be going through an agreement, where to find the verbiage, what to look for, and how to execute this process. And so many of you at this point should have already gone through this material, and I emphasize that it's important that you do, because this three-part class is gonna cover everything that you guys need in order for you to understand this process. Now, I'm going to emphasize to you guys that if you are applying this and you guys are just skipping steps and it doesn't work, first question I'm going to ask you is what material you covered, right? Because at that point, you'll be wasting my time. And I want to make sure you guys are going through the details that are necessary for you guys to really understand this because it's right in front of your face, right? And it all starts with the agreement. And so, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to go step by step on where to start and how to finish with this entire process, where to find the verbiage, and really what it looks like for this particular bank, right? So to begin, we're going to cover the fact that it is different for every company, right? Every company uses different verbiage in their agreement. It's your responsibility to read it and review your own agreement with your signature, not mine, right? Because at the end of the day, you signed into it. I'm not an attorney. I'm not giving you guys any legal advice, right? This is your this is based on my personal experience, and it's also your responsibility, right? Because it's your signature ultimately on all these financial obligations. And so, first step you guys are going to need to take is you need to go through the first three-part series. You need to go through part one, two, and three. If you already haven't, take notes. Really make sure you understand what qualifies a negotiable instrument. What are the requirements? What can cause it to be rejected? All right. If you don't understand any of that and it does get rejected, you don't know what to do because you don't understand it. This is why you should go through this three-part series so you can cover all of it because it's a process of elimination. And if you really understand what you're doing, you understand the intent behind the process. Not only will you have an understanding of whether or not and have the confidence that you're doing it right, you don't have any second guessing. You don't have to wonder that it's being done right. You know it's being done right, and it's their obligation to fulfill it. And I'll show you how to enforce it through the agreement because that's ultimately the only thing that stands between you and the bank. And so the first step you guys always want to do is pull your agreement. And so there's many ways you could do this. There's resources you can find online directly in the company website, or you can actually go to the CFPB, right? The CFPB has a database that covers that. And so in today's example, for those of you who are in the university, you have that actually here available for the full agreement for this example. But I'm going to actually show it for all the viewers who may not know exactly what to do in this scenario. So what I do in this case, right, you can go about it two ways. You can go to CFPB, right, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, right? Once you're in this Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, you could search credit card agreements, and they'll give you a database, right? You can go all the credit card agreements, or Google might be easiest. If you be credit card agreements, search, there's your agreement database. So because we're doing Capital One today, I'm gonna do that for the sake. I'm gonna put in Capital One. And there you go. All right. And so you've got different types of cards here. You want to narrow it down to the exact card you have. And you may not necessarily find your card. So just use the actual credit card agreement. So if you have a consumer secured card with Capital One, that's you would have the consumer secured cards agreement. If you had just the consumer cards agreement, or you had like a credit card, just like a standard credit card, right? You don't necessarily have to have a Bass Pro Shop Club card, or you don't necessarily have to have a Visa signature and World MasterCard. You simply just need to have their consumer card, right? And so that's where I would start with. I would pull that agreement. And now that you have their agreement, we're going to download it and we're going to review it for its material. I emphasize the agreement a lot, guys, because they're instructing you on what to do from start to finish. And the answers aren't coming from me. And there is no magical wand that you could wave to execute any of this stuff. You simply need to read, right? And so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to take you directly to where it's instructing us to actually perform the endorsement or the conditional payment, right? And I'm going to show you the things to look for when it comes to verbiage. Now, what I can quickly review with you guys is most of these agreements are pretty standard, right? It covers the terms, it covers your interests that you owe, it covers basically the limited power of attorney that you gave, because this is what you're doing. You gave limited power of attorney uh, on them to act on behalf of you, right? And those of you who do actually go through, read it, will notice that it's pretty one-dimensional, right? It's mainly favored for them and not favored for you in any way, shape, or form. What it is favoring you with is how to make your payments. And we'd have to go through and read that, right? And so basically, majority of the instructions on your agreement is going to cover everything that you've agreed them to do, including and not limited to them just closing your account for any reason whatsoever. It has nothing to do with you attempting to make payments. It has nothing to do with you uh, simply forgetting to make a payment, right? It has everything to do with the fact that you gave them that authorization through this agreement. And so, usually, as you go through your agreement, and some of them state words such as, "We can and may close your account for any reason with for whatever reason without notice, and you don't even need to be in default." And so, what that means is you could be paying everything on time. You could have never have missed a payment. You could have had the account open for years and it just happened to close down. And so that's one thing a lot of people fail to realize is the amount of power you had given. And when your account closes down, you're wondering what happened. Well, you agreed to it, right? You just didn't take the time to read it. And so it's in front of us. And so without going into all the other extra details, right? This is to mainly cover the endorsement process. I'm going to be going specifically through how to make payments, where to make payments, and how it's instructing us, right? And so because I pull this agreement here, right, I'm showing you specifically where to find the verbiage, right? Like for example, this one says making payments, right? And so as we identify where it's telling us to go for payment resolution and how to make payments and where they want us to send payments, we're going to be referencing that through the agreement. And so it's different for each company. So those of you watching the video thinking, it's going to be the same words, it's going to be the same process. It's not. It's going to be different. They're going to use different words, different verbiage. I'm just giving you guidance on where you can actually do the research of finding it for your own agreements. So in this particular case, your payment must be made in US dollars from a US deposit account in form acceptable to us. So we do not accept cash payments through mail. You may not make payments with funds from your account or any other credit account with us or any other credit account with us or any other company in Capital One organization. You must send mail payments to us as instructed in your statement unless we tell you otherwise. So this is the address it's giving you to send the payment specifically. And now this includes items marked as paid in full or similar language. This is also that includes all accompanying communications. If you make such a payment or send any accompanying communication to another address, we may reject it and return it to you. We may also accept it and process it without losing your rights. And so I pulled this Capital One agreement because it is a little bit different from another one, right? And so as we go through and read that part, it's telling you where to send it. Now, as you continue to read your agreement, it's going to tell you specifically here items with restrictive words, conditions, or instructions. It says here that you must mail all items bearing restrictive words, conditions, limitations, or special instructions, right? Where is the rest of it? Here, to Capital One, this address specifically, this includes items marked paid in full. And so this is what it's telling us to do, right? These are the instructions. And to simplify for you, actually, I put it here in the campus. And this is how one of the other agreements look like. It's the exact same. This one is just a little bit confusing because it's cut off and it continues on the other section of the page. And so as you go through and read this, guys, like there's some more key things to highlight, right? Because if you're looking at specifically where it's telling you to send everything, it's telling you to send it to this exact location. But in regards to making the payments, if you're looking at making your payment, it's telling you what not to use. It's telling you not to use any US dollars from US deposit account or form of acceptable or deposit account in a form acceptable to us. So it does not accept cash payment. And so they're telling you what they do and don't take. Now, if you do make that decision of trying to send them a cash payment, they won't accept it. They won't accept it. And they're telling you here in the agreement, you must send mailed payments to us as instructed on your statement unless we tell you otherwise. And so if you don't follow the instructions they're telling you, don't be surprised if it doesn't get accepted. Now, we'll get to this part in a little bit later, but this is basically going to cover like the timeline and when this stuff is going to get processed for you guys, right? And so once you've sent it off, it's going to cover the timeline and when to expect it to be credited on your account. Because if you don't understand what that timeline is, you won't know how and when to enforce it, right? You just won't. And so reading this part of the agreement, we're going to get back to that when we get to the bottom section here, right? Because that's going to go hand in hand with the enforcement piece and what's going to lead up to it as you're providing those instructions. And so we've gotten to this point, right? You guys have pulled your agreement because it's the first thing you're doing, right? We haven't even gotten to the bond and the coupon for restricting it because that doesn't mean anything if you don't know where to send it, right? And so that's why we're covering this first. And so we've determined that it's going to this specific address because it is including special instructions. It's covering restrictive words and it's giving you an address to send it to. Now, this also includes items marked paid in full or similar language. Now, I'll be covering with you how I do it specifically. You guys can mark it as paid in full. It is completely up to you, but I'm going to show you how I do it. And so remember, all of the agreements are going to cover very specific language. It's going to cover restrictive endorsement, conditional payment, special payments. It's going to cover payment instructions, special deposit, alternative payments, restrictive payments. This section is where you guys want to reference. Now, once you've gotten to this point, you need to confirm with the company. And how do you do that? Because you understand what's in your agreement, what are you doing? You're going to call them. You're going to call the number on your statement. And so they always have a number on the back of the statement for you to call. And so for any questions related to billing, they're going to tell you at the back of your statement where to call them. And so you're going to call that number and speak with somebody that's a customer service rep in that department and confirm with them where to send the special instructions, right? Because in the agreement, you're going to use the same verbiage that they're using. And so, hey, my name is XYZ. I'm calling to confirm where I should be mailing my documents that are bearing restrictive words, conditions, limitations, or special instructions. Is this Capital One address the correct address I am mailing this to? You're confirming, guys. And I'm telling you guys to do this because it could be that it updated, or it could be that they tell you something different. But the whole idea here is to confirm and verify that the address that you are sending it to is correct and that what's said in the agreement is accurate. Because there are certain situations where the agreement may have updated and you want to get a copy of your agreement. Some of you may have credit cards you've had for years. But remember, the agreement you went into originally stands. If the address changed in any way, shape, or form, you're just calling to confirm. Remember, what you're enforcing is on the agreement. We're not making anything difficult here. We've simply gone through the agreement. We've identified where it's telling us to send special payments, restrictive endorsements to this very specific address related to the Capital One statement. And when you're calling them, there's a variety of different ways you can follow up. And because every company uses different verbiage, the language behind their agreements is a little bit different. This is why I emphasize it's important you guys understand this stuff. If you can't really educate somebody on this, if you can't teach somebody what any of this stuff means, you're not ready to apply it. I'm just being honest, right? It's just like applying a credit repair process step by step without understanding how the profile works. And when your score doesn't go up, you don't know why because you don't understand how a credit profile works. It's just a basic fundamental. So these are basic definitions. The language behind it is basic, and you have to go through and understand it. So now you've confirmed the address, you know where to send it to, right? You've confirmed you're going to send it to the right place. And now we're going to follow the proper procedures on how to endorse, right? And so if you guys have gone through part 1, 2, and 3, I cover step by step in all of these videos what qualifies as an endorsement, right? I'm not going to revisit that because that's stuff that you guys should be reviewing on your own. I've covered all of that. Now, because you understand what qualifies for an endorsement, you're going to know how to endorse it. You're going to know how to provide instructions on doing so, right? And what you're going to notice in this example is it's a lot more simplified because it's following the instructions that have been provided regarding endorsements, right? Restrictive and special endorsements. And some of you may have noticed in the previous videos, I covered the changes regarding stamps, all right, how stamps are not actually a lawful requirement. You don't need to actually, you're not required by any law to actually use a stamp. You can actually write your endorsement out. And so what I did in this example was I just wrote it out. There were no stamps involved. Right now, while that is all optional, right, if you understand the information I covered in the previous classes, that stuff is optional because I revisited all of it. It is not actually a requirement in UCC or CFR, right? And so when we get to the endorsement of the instrument, right? So we've confirmed where we're sending it to. And whether you have Amex or Bank of America, you've gone through the agreement, you understand the language behind it, what it means, where to send special payments, you've called them, you've confirmed, now you know where to send it. Now we're going to move on to the endorsement piece. And so now that you're at this point, you have your billing statement here, right? Now, in this specific statement, remember the instructions that were provided, right, related to your actual endorsement, right, partially making its way in between the bond and the actual coupon, right? That's part of the instruction. And so that's what this is doing here. And the placement here is intentional. While all of your statements are different, some of you may be looking at this and thinking you need to do it exactly like this. Guys, this coupon statement can be at the top for other banks. The logo could be on the right-hand side for other banks. They're all different. And so if you really understand the rules and what qualifies an endorsement, you won't question where to endorse or how to endorse. But if you don't understand what qualifies for an endorsement, then of course you won't know what to do. And so I emphasize go back, review part 1, 2, and 3 so that you could fully understand how all this works. And so you'll notice here that you're going to pay it to the order of the all caps name. You're going to pay to the order of the all caps names for special deposit, for credit on account, and you're going to have them redeem it for lawful money pursuant to this USC. Now, ideally, this is restricting them and it's telling them where to actually deposit, right? We're restricting the endorsement. And so if you don't, you end up leaving what's called a blank endorsement. And the blank endorsement, as I explained before, is what allows them to make it out to whoever, however, right? Similar to signing information on a check and not restricting it as to who it goes to. Anyone can redeem it. And so we're making it payable to someone specific, right? Pay to the order of the all caps name, which for those of you who would be operating in trust, right? You would put your all caps name, right? You're acting as trustee, or you could just use the all caps name if you're not operating in trust. Now, as I mentioned before, you don't need to be operating in trust to do this. But if you want to enforce this stuff, guys, it's going to make it much easier for you to enforce if you're operating in trust. Because if you're not, you won't have the paperwork to support you. And so I cover that in the first three parts. Now, this is very simple, right? We're not adding anything extra to this, right? So this is not being separated because if you do separate the bond and the coupon, it disqualifies. I'm going to send it right back to you. And so what you'll notice here is I've placed 5,529 cents. And it's been written out, right? And so it looks like it's a stamp, guys. I just used an editor online to do this, but this ideally would be in blue pen in handwriting, right? Paid to the order of it be in handwriting. All of this would be in handwriting. Some of you are asking or may ask, well, can I type it out? Well, if you want to know the answer to that, go review part 1, 2, and 3. The answer is there. And so in this particular example, this account is not being paid in full, right? What's happening here is I submitted it for 5,529 cents, which would leave a balance of $206, right? Now, the whole idea here, guys, is to pay majority of the statement, right? To credit the majority of the account. And once that amount is credited, you can continue to make further payments on the account. But this balance that's being left behind, regardless of whether or not you believe that it'll leave the account open, remember what the agreement says, that they may close your account for any and whatever reason, right? And so that's why it's important to have the power of attorney on file to be able to challenge that, right? And so ideally, what we're doing in this particular case is simply making a payment. Now, can you make the full payment? Absolutely. You can make however much of a payment you want. You want to do 500, do 500. You want to do the full balance, do the full balance. This is just an example, guys. So we'll just sign it here and place the account number. Now, your account number is the account number of the credit card. And usually that's provided to you in the statement. So you'll find that account number on the statement. It's very simple. Now on the back, you are going to endorse it just like this for deposit only by all caps name, authorized representative without recourse, right? And so that's what's going to look like on the back of the actual coupon. And so this would be ideally on the back here. Now, if there's words in the back, you could still do it. Just make sure it's in an area where it's legible, they can read it, and it's clear, right? Because there are some statements that have words on the back. As you can see here, there are some words. Remember, the instructions state do not cover any important information such as your serial numbers, or anything specifically related to account information that they will need. And that's all still covered again in the part 1, part 2, and 3. And so you'll know what not to cover by reviewing all that information. I'm just sharing this example for you guys on how to simply endorse the instrument, right? It's literally this simple. It's not that difficult. The next step is optional, guys, right? There's no actual requirement for this. I do this for enforcement purposes, right? If enforcement is necessary, I have a letter of instruction I provided that's clarifying what I'm looking to be done on the account, right? And so it's optional, guys. And I place this here for those of you who want to use it. You don't need to. You can simply mail this out once it's done. It's optional to send a letter of instruction. I prefer to do it. So you're going to mail the letter of instruction, and if you decide to do it, and the instrument, you could do it via registered mail, which is what the instructions state, right, on how to mail it. Personally, I just do priority mail. They're going to receive it anyways. It's trackable. But remember, I'm giving you guys direction based on the instructions. I'm letting you know what I prefer to do. You guys decide what you want to do, right? Read the exact rules, read the laws, apply it as you may, but just know I've given you guys all the instructions based on what was provided. All of the optional information I'm providing you is from what I've used and what's helped me. So once you've mailed this, right, you've mailed your agreement out, or you mailed this instrument out, and you have your tracking number and you've confirmed delivery. Now you want to check in your agreement for how long it typically takes for them to credit your account once it's been received. And so let's say I mail it out on the 25th of October and they receive it in 5 to 7 business days. And so let's say realistically they're going to receive it by, say, November 5th, right? And so November 5th comes around, it's delivered. Typically you want to verify that they've credited based on the agreement, right? So your agreement is going to tell you how long it'll take for them to transfer it. So when you send us an item as payment, now guys, remember the verbiage here. They just use this to trick you. You authorize us to make a one-time electronic fund transfer from your deposit account. Pay attention to the language. You also authorize us to process the payment as an item. We may withdraw the funds from your deposit account as early as the same day we receive your payment. You will not receive your item back from the bank. Guys, remember the language here, your item, right? You're sending a special payment, a restrictive endorsement, right? This is all to make it broad, not easily identifiable. But those of you who understand what all of this means, it's easier for you to really identify what they're saying. You will not receive your item back from the bank. We will provide additional information about this process on your statement. And so where are you checking to verify that this has been accepted? It should reflect on your statement, right? Say it's been delivered and you check your statement and your statement is not reflective of this, then you will now follow the enforcement. Now, you only need to wait the time frame that they state that they will credit your account. So if they don't credit your account within the time frame that's in the agreement, then you follow the endorsement process, the enforcement process, right? And I have this here. And so I do provide you guys with the letter of instruction here. It does go over an example of what it would look like. Again, this is optional for you guys. And I'm simply just going over this so that you guys can quickly see that you have that available to you. But to simplify this process for you guys, this is simply how to endorse. And this can be applied to any coupon. These are qualified endorsements. This could be applied to any coupon. So if you have an auto loan, if you have a loan, if you have a credit card statement, you have to confirm that the company that you are um, attempting to do this with, guys, is specifically instructing you in the agreement, right? There are some companies that are not registered with the SEC, therefore they don't exchange securities. And so you won't be able to do this with those companies, but you have to determine that by reading your agreement. It will include it in there. And so I'm going to emphasize this one more time that you guys need to read your agreement. I've simply, that's all I've done today. I've gone through the agreement, right? And so the part that I covered down here in this section is what I mentioned earlier here that was in the agreement, right? It tells you how long it takes for them to process it. And those of you reading other agreements for other banks, such as say Amex, for example, it may have different verbiage. It may have a different timeline on how long it takes for them to credit the account, right? And so you have to go through and read that, where I can't give you that. You just have to read. What I've done for you today is I've simply pointed you in the right direction, and you can apply this exact blueprint to all of the bills that you have. You simply need to start with your agreement, determine what instructions they give you, confirm with them which address they're sending special payments to, and then start endorsing. Endorse the document. Now, those of you going into this process, if you're not willing to go all the way and sue these guys, and I don't even recommend bothering to try, because it's just like credit repair. And I reference credit repair a lot, guys, because we talk about that. It goes hand in hand. All of it comes down to enforcement, right? Now, I recently just launched the litigation campus where we're covering how to sue the credit bureaus. Sometimes you have to sue the credit bureaus. While the method works and it's proven to work because you guys see the results in the university, it doesn't always work for everybody. Some people have to go all the way. It's the same thing here. It's the same exact thing here. And so the more knowledge you have, the more willing you are to go all the way, the better chances are you having this be executed. Now, there's individuals who get this done and it works the first time. There's others who have tried a couple times and it doesn't work. It varies, but you have to start with understanding how this works, because a lot of people have the idea that you simply apply everything and it works. It's not how it goes, right? Some companies are going to test you. So many companies want to see you go all the way. Once you file a lawsuit against them, then I have to prove that it's not acceptable. And how you're going to file it is the same way they'd file it against you, right? And so as I review the Capital One agreement, right, let's say you you didn't actually fulfill your obligation to pay, right? Your promise to pay was that you would agree to make payments. And so what they will do to you in this case is if you don't make payments, they will hold you accountable, breach of agreement, right? You did not make payment, right? You will default according to the agreement. And typically what happens in this case is they'll sell it to a debt collector and the debt collector will then sue you, right? And while we all know how that goes, because we cover that in the litigation campus, this is all comes to show you that they're willing to enforce the agreement. Why aren't you? You're both in it. It's just that the company is willing to do the work and go all the way to claim what's right and what you agreed to, but we're not willing to go all the way and claim what we agreed to and enforce what we agreed to. And so what we're enforcing is the fact that in the agreement, it states that I am to mail all items bearing restrictive words to this following address, right? Small form of payment. And then they agree that we may withdraw, right, the funds from the deposit account as early as the same day we receive the payment. And so if that doesn't occur, who's in breach of agreement? It's in the agreement. They issued it. They were creative of the agreement. You signed it. You're simply enforcing it. And so we're not going outside of what's in front of us, guys, to enforce this. And the only reason I laid it out this way is because there's no reason to overthink this. It starts with your agreement and it ends with your agreement. And so we simply follow the agreement. You know you're doing everything correctly because at this point you should understand what an endorsement is, how they work, what type of endorsements exists, what they all mean. You also understand that your agreement holds specific instructions on where to send this information. And it can vary by bank, right? Not every company is the same. And so I am putting together an enforcement campus for you guys. So I do already have letters available for the enforcement that I'll be providing to you guys this week. But I wanted to put together step by step because there are ways we can enforce by submitting complaints as well as following through with notices, and then how to submit an actual court complaint. And so those of you willing to go all the way, you will have that available to you. I'll provide you with a court complaint template specifically for this specific situation regarding breach of contract related to failure to accept the payment, right? Because ideally, you are fulfilling obligation in the contract. You are not refusing to pay, right? You've made an attempt to pay. Now, I do tell you this all the time, and to summarize this process, you guys are required to actually stay in honor, right? And so as you guys are sending your special payments and you're sending your special deposits, the alternative payment instruments, your bond, right? All of this stuff is the same language. And so once you've sent that, you follow the instructions in the agreement, everything is in accordance with the agreement. There's nothing extra we're doing here, guys. This is how simple it actually is. And so I recommend priority mail, but you guys can follow the instruction, should you prefer, by registered mail, because that's what is in the instruction. All right, and I cover how to do it, how to do the endorsement on the back. And so you always want to stay in honor, because if you guys stop making payments because they didn't accept it, now you're in breach of the agreement. Now they have something to use against you. So continue to make your payments in accordance to the agreement, your promise to pay. And so that when you do enforce it, they're still in the breach of agreement and they have no way to actually turn around and say that you breached the agreement. Because the moment you stop making payments, you breach the agreement, it's game over. You're gonna have to kind of start over. All right. And so the administrative process is what will be followed to enforce this. It's actually very short, guys. So the window for following the administrative process here, guys, is like about 15 business days. Why? Because they should have credited the moment they received it within the 1 day, according to Capital One. Now, if you have a different bank, it could be 3 days, it could be 5. Read your agreement, right? And so I can't give you the short time frame for that particular process. You have to review your agreement for that. But once you've determined the time frame, say it was 5 days, you allow them the 5 days. Following the 6th day, you send them another notice if they haven't actually credited it on your statement. If it's not reflective on your statement, they have breached the agreement. You'll send them a notice, give them an additional 5 days, follow with another notice, and then you file a court complaint. So this takes less than 30 days to execute if you follow the cadence, right? And so it doesn't take long to enforce this type of thing, guys, because of the speed in which all of this is required to be done in. And because the agreement agrees to have it done in X amount of time, you allow that time frame. Should that time frame surpass, you can follow through with another notice. And if they still don't credit it, that's where I would file a lawsuit. Again, you guys have to be willing to go all the way. The ones who say this stuff doesn't work are the ones that are lazy. They don't want to go all the way with this. They're not willing to provide any proof that this doesn't work. I've shown you guys that this stuff works. And I'm going over this entire process with you guys again, because I want to provide clarity on what's important and what you need to follow. You have to follow the instructions. You have to understand what all of this stuff means. And so when you're applying this process, any questions you have, you understand where you are. If you have doubts, I would go back to studying because it's all here. I've laid it all out for you guys. And then I've shared with you guys before, right? Do you need to be operating in trust? No, you don't need to do all the extra stuff. You could simply go through and follow this process. Now, if you need to enforce it, I recommend you do operate in trust. I recommend that you do act as administrator on paper. Because if you don't, how do you prove you're administrator? That's like saying, hey, like, I'm the owner of the credit card. All right, show me the name on your credit card. And if you can't show them, you can't prove it. So if you have nothing to show, you have nothing to prove. It is then now presumed that you are not. And so unless you want to end up in that situation, I recommend you do have everything lined up. Otherwise, you could still follow this process, still apply it, right? The key here is that you guys understand that your agreement is the number one key to all of this.